I was about to record a whole show and forget to press the record button. I am such a weirdo. I love it. I love it. Cameras, lights, action. Hello, beautiful people. This is the Mendo Money Mindset Show. Hi, I'm your humble host, Raymond Habel, lifetime resident in Mendocino County, a proud dad of a beautiful baby boy who's now 4.5, who is loving daycare, a realtor, full-time career for the past 6 years, and a self-improvement hobbyist. I'll be your host today, and I hope you're doing well. Today is a very good day, and hopefully tomorrow will be even better. But for right now in this moment, I'm very excited to share with you a wonderful April show. This will cover everything that happened during the month of April. As you know, if you've listened to the show before, this show comes in 3 parts. As a realtor, I would love to share with you my knowledge about the market. That's the first section. How is the data? What's the stats, the trends? Raymond, paint for me a picture. Through the data and actual reliable information on how the market is doing. Second, we'll go into personal finances, talk about tips, strategies, mental frames for us to use when it comes to navigating our wealth. Because wealth doesn't solve non-money problems, but it does solve money problems. And then the last part, if you've heard this show before, you'll know, is our mindset section. And this show, it's going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to have these 2 later parts interwoven with each other. Because if you have ever had experience with finances, and if you've ever experienced personal development or just emotions as a human being, you know these are very much crossed over. In the large 2 circles, the Venn diagram of life, they are very much crossed over. So we'll talk about that, and I'm very excited for this part of the show. I want to start this show off with a quote. This quote was given to me a wonderful man, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astronomer of our age, who has brought science to the masses and made it relatable for the people. He was on an interview recently, and he talked about his tombstone. And he said, "This is what I want on my tombstone." Now, this gentleman he was quoting was Horace Mann. This man was called the father of public education. He said in one of his graduation speeches, one of the last ones he ever did, he said, "I beseech you to treasure up in your hearts these my parting words. Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." What if we all lived like that? What if we all had that thought? What a great quote. With that said, we'll get right into it. We're going to be talking about the Mendocino County market update for April 2025. As mentioned in previous episodes, if you ever want to see the actual pictures, the actual stats, and the things that we talk about in our commentary, I have the report for free that I'm very happy to send your way. Getting right into it, we talk about some of these things when it comes to Mendocino County market update. The first, and one of my favorite, markers or graphs we look at as realtors, as real estate professionals, is the active for sale inventory, how many pending homes do we have, and how did our solds do last month. Now, if you've ever seen a report, you'll most likely see the term YOY. What does that mean? That typically means year over year, because we understand that seasons have different outcomes. Fall is different than summer, spring is different than winter. So we are comparing April of 2025 to April 2024, and we're seeing the difference. What has actually changed since that point? For our for sale active inventory, these are homes currently for sale on the market with those white post for sale signs up. We are seeing a 24.5% monthly increase month over month from March to April. And we are seeing a 34% increase year over year. Sold homes down marginally, 3.8%. But pending homes, now if you don't know what pending home metric means, it simply means escrows. If you've never bought a home before, this is the in-between time that a buyer and seller have shaken hands saying, yes, we will buy/sell the home. And now we are taking the 30-day process to verify all the details. This is when we get the bank involved, we do the inspections, we make sure the title's clean, all of that sort of detail work to transition for new home ownership. Those are escrows. Now, this is an interesting stat from Mendocino County for April. Year over year, we have increased our pending inventory 46.7%. How interesting is that? We're up almost 50% in pending homes, and we have 34% more active inventory. If you see the graph I see, we actually now currently have the most active inventory that we've had for the past 12 months, hovering right around this 360 units, 360 houses range. Very interesting. Next, we like to go into price per square foot. I get asked almost every single day, Raymond, how much is my home worth? And are we going up? Are we going down? Prices is the number one question I get. And without actually sitting in front of you, without actually looking at your home, this is the best thing I can give you to actually show us how prices are doing right now. Average price per square foot sold is now down 1.9% marginally, but up 7.9% month over month. Now, this is an interesting stat we'll come back later to. Days on market. Days on market are how long does it take us between the first day we have it in the MLS with that for sale sign up, all the way to handshakes and keys exchanged as the new buyers walk into that house. Average days on market went down month over month, 28%, down from, I think, 130 days was March's metric, down to 99 days for the month of April. This is still 11.2% increase year over year. So days on market is still climbing up. However, it did come down. It was a worrying sign to see last month for the month of March, but luckily we're seeing buyer demand being realized. Next and finally, we have one of my favorite metrics, months of inventory. And months of inventory is calculated in a very fun way. The example I like to give is if we had 100 homes on the market and we could not put another home on there, we put the lid on the MLS and we said no more homes, how many months would it take to sell? And that is roughly how we calculate months of inventory. How many homes are currently on the market and how long does it take us to sell? Our months of inventory compared to last year, compared to last April, is up 38.7%, which makes sense given the increase in available inventory. Now, coming back to price per square foot, when we look up at the graph of for sale inventory and solds, you can see a couple of signs that might indicate we are reaching an additional amount of inventory and it is going slower on the market, which typically means we're going into a buyer's market. However, it's very hard to be black and white about these issues. As we see on price per square foot, we are still holding steady with a very marginal decrease. So I am telling it is a great opportunity, first and foremost for buyers. We have the most inventory we've had in 12 plus months. It is a great time to go out there and make offers. As I've encouraged in previous months, we're going to be looking at, I have some buyers. We're going to be looking at some homes in Brook Trails tomorrow afternoon. Be looking at 5 homes, I think 6 now. And we are going to stress the homes that have been on the market longest and be probably the most competitive with those. Because we understand as buyers that these sellers are probably tired of paying this mortgage payment for all of the months that they have been on the market. Here's a good time for a buyer to come in and make a strategic offer. For sellers, even with additional inventory, which does mean additional competition, this is an amazing time to sell. Because we are seeing our price per square foot hold steady. The grass is green as long as you price it accurately, as long as you have it professionally marketed, as long as you have a realtor in your corner. By the way, for sale by owner, that metric is you will sell for 30% more using a realtor compared to a for sale by owner back in 2021 by the National Association of Realtors. So if you've ever thought of, I want to save a couple of dollars and not use a realtor, I would highly look into your strengths and your advantages and make sure that's the right option for you. But have someone on your side. Have someone in your team that knows what they are doing and can help sell your home effectively. What was your thoughts on that? Is that interesting to hear? Have you been thinking as the grass is green, maybe it's time to move yonder, whether it's into Mendocino County or out of? Have you been thinking of selling recently? And now that you finally got the lawn mowed, you can think about putting it on the market. All of these things, these stats I've hopefully departed to you, the data-based information that I can give you, I hope that helps. I hope this informs. What I tell my clients when I sit down across the table from them, I say, my job, my number one job is to help you make an educated decision. Whether you buy, sell, rent, invest, or you just keep on doing what you're keeping on doing, I just want you to make an informed decision. That's why this information is free. That's why we do the radio show. That's why we make the content, because I want you informed. We are amazingly blessed to live in a society where information is abundantly available. And I would feel that it is my obligation, my duty to help you share this information and give it to you. So next, we will be going into, someone says I need some transition music. What's your thoughts? What's a good intro or transition song? I have a couple in mind. I was raised off of classic rock and roll, so who knows, we might add something in there. But for now, you'll just have to listen to my voice. I digress. With that said, for the personal finance section today, we're going to be talking about soft savings. What is soft savings? So, a newer generation, Gen Z and the people around that age, has been coming up with new terms. I think SUS is one of them, S-U-S. I can't wait for my son to get older and then start telling me these, and then I will feel like the older generation that doesn't understand. But with these new terms, one of the terms that has came out of this is something called the idea of soft savings. Now, what is soft savings? It is the counter push or the opposite pendulum swing of the culture we've been given, which says save, save, save. Save in our 401k, save in our Roth IRA, save in mutual funds, save for retirement, save your additional income, save for the rainy day fund. All of these ideas on savings, this is a more flexible idea to that. Now, we'll be talking about a couple of things, but I'd like to first go to a wonderful article that you can also read with me by bankrate.com. It says, Saving and Financial Health. It says, well, what is soft savings? It says, finding a balance between financial and mental health. It says, here's a key takeaway, 47% of Gen Zs say that money has a negative impact on their mental health. Key concerns being inflation, which we've talked about before, debt, which we've also talked about, and not having enough emergency savings, which we're going to talk about. Soft savings are spending money for present day enjoyment instead of the savings for the future. Also, this is maybe for young adults that are looking to see opportunities, maybe life experiences, and how do we weigh that against, okay, we have savings, we have how much savings, what is sort of the metric. Let's think of an example here before we kind of continue here. This is the balance between our mental health, and I would argue maybe memories, which we'll talk about, experiences. We're now in what we call the experience economy. Experiences versus savings. Now, let's say that you have a cruise. I just spoke with a good friend that took a cruise. $10,000. It's an Alaskan cruise. It goes all around. You can see the whales. You can eat all you can eat and have these experiences. Do you do it? Well, we're going to implement something called the soft savings method. And we're going to kind of look through this, and we're going to go through this together. There's actually some really great stats on here targeting or explaining that finances does have a negative impact to mental health. When talking about this, when we have this example, it is saying that we are using discretionary extra income and we are weighing in two hands, what do we do with this? Do we go on, for the example, this $10,000 cruise, which could be a $500 hotel night on the weekend. It could be a $20,000 internship for a hobby. It could be all these reasons. Or do we do the savings? Soft savings is the idea that we are flexible because we are trying to enjoy the moment. Here's a couple of criterias that we talk about when doing this, some strategies. It says, implement the treat yourself tax. For every non-essential purchase, match the amount that you'll be doing and putting into a savings. This we'll talk about a little bit later. This is one of the tools we can implement. We can implement something called the 50-30-20 budgeting rule, allocating 50% towards our necessities, 30% towards discretionary, and 20% towards savings. Again, another tip, trick. We can automate the savings contribution, build the emergency fund. This stuff all leans in to being financially healthy. But I should back up a little bit. When we talk about soft savings, this is the age-old argument, should I have fun and go on this experience, or should I continue to save? Now, your personal finances is a very nuanced situation. Only you can make the choice of. Not a financial advisor. I can't tell you what to do. However, what I can strongly suggest is there's a couple of things that you can think of when it comes to, do I do this? Now, first, let's think of your financial situation, right? Are you financially healthy? Which means we have understood, tracked, and are reasonably in touch with our expenses. Have we tried to reduce them? Do we understand what we're spending on? Do we also have control on our income? Do we have a good sense that we'll have recurring income for the foreseeable future? Do we have, minus those two, do we have the net or the additional discretionary income after that amount, which serves as our monthly cash flow? Let me put a pin in this. If you are considering doing something or implementing the soft savings idea, but we are coming out of pocket every month for expenses, is that really the right decision to do? We'll come back to this later. However, this is a great opportunity to sit down and say, okay, we have a $10,000 cruise. We have this amount of expenses. We have this amount of income. We have this amount of extra cash flow to us. What is our emergency fund savings looking like? I don't want to advise that anybody goes out there and just says, hey, I don't have an emergency fund. I am living paycheck to paycheck. If I had a $1,000 car whoopsies, I would have to use a credit card because I don't have the savings. Maybe spending those $10,000 on that Alaskan cruise might not be worth it. Okay, so we've identified some of the things to think about first. If you have this example opportunity of an Alaskan cruise for $10,000, you have evaluated your financial health. Let's assume you're financially healthy, at least you're making cash flow. right? You're bringing in more than you're spending, and you understand and kind of have control of that situation. Your emergency budget. In the case of emergency, you have some finances set aside to be able to pay the rainy day fund. Someone gets sick, a car needs to be replaced, you have a job that has just been gone because of AI. You now have this rainy day fund. I hear among the community 3 to 6 months. Typically 3 to 6 months of expenses, that should be enough to get you by. So let's assume, number two, you have 3 to 6 months of expenses. Now, you need to ask yourself, should you go on this Alaskan cruise? There's this wonderful book, and I will find the offer for you because I really enjoyed this book. It says Die with Zero, Bill Perkins. The idea with this book is that you live in stages. And we have been taught in our Western culture to save, 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 right? 65 is the number. I'll get my retirement then. I will delay gratification all the way until I'm retired and then really enjoy my life. What Bill Perkins argues is he says, well, I think you should maximize for the stage you are in. Well, what does he mean by that? Well, let's say you're in your mid-40s. And let's say, as another example, you love to ski. Let's say a ski pass costs you, let's say $3,000, the rental gear, going out there, all of that stuff. You look at this and you say, okay, I'm building up, I'm mid-40s. Let's say I have my emergency fund. Let's say I have my financial health in order. Let's say I have some savings for retirement, some 401k somewhere. You ask yourself, am I going to get the return on investment on this? And also, I am 40 years old. Will I be able to feasibly ski when I am 60? When I'm 70, 80, 90, 100? So that means that you're in a season. And that means you have an opportunity that has a potential deadline. So do you do the ski trip? Well, you might lean more towards it because you know one day you won't be able to. Next, you have something that I really love, his idea of memory dividends. Let's say you're 20 years old. You have an internship to Germany, but it's going to cost you, let's say, some wild amount, let's say 15 grand. Yeah, that might be cheap nowadays. But let's say $15,000 to go on this internship to Germany. Let's say you can't get a scholarship, parents won't pay for it. Do you do it? Well, if you can gather the cash, it might pay you huge amounts in memory dividends over the course of your lifetime. Because, and think about it like this, you have a dividend like a stock. You have a dividend like a treasury bond that pays out some. A dividend is something that pays you out extra. You put $10 into it and you get 10 cents every once in a while. That's a dividend. If we think of that same finance term and we apply it to memories, i.e. unique experiences, then we can then argue, well, this is going to be the moment of a lifetime I'll always have with me. That argues towards the stage again. So anytime, let's bring it back to the Alaskan cruise. You are going to have a memory, which let's say you're also in your mid-40s. Let's say you're young. You know, the friends I know that did go on this cruise, they are in their mid-40s. And the stereotype, you might say, for someone in their cruise prime, their cruise ships, is maybe retirement age. However, you can argue, I will have a better memory dividend that I can have for the next 30 years of doing this memory now while I can. And then I'm looking at the reasons here. You also have income inflation. When you are 20 years old and you're scrounging up quarters and pennies in your couch to go ahead, if you're working as the dishwasher, to save up for this $15,000 Germany internship, that amount feels significantly more And I would argue probably has a much larger mental impact of you spending that large amount now while you're 20 than you are when you're 45. If you're 45 and you spend $5,000 a month for your home, your car, your family, that's 3 months of wages. When you're 20, that might be the most that you've ever seen in your lifetime. So you have this idea, well, it might cost me what I perceive as a large amount now. And that might be an argument to do it because I know I will continue to increase my earning capacity. I will continue to be able to build my skills so I will earn more money. Let's say you're 65 years old. Will you have the same amount of increased income inflation? Maybe not. Will you have the amount of savings or discretionary income to do it? Sure, maybe. So then we go into something that he kind of sets as his time buckets. I like to think of this as stages. If you think about it, you have 20 to 30 years, you have 60 plus years, and then you have the sweet spot right in the middle, 31 to 60. So you have the first stage, 20 to 30, you have the next stage, 30 to 60, and then 60 plus. Well, if you think about it, when you're 20 to 30, guess what you have a lot of? Time. You also have a lot of health. Doing a backpacking trip when you're 25 years old makes a lot more sense than when you're 70. So you have time, you have health, but you don't have money. Okay, gotcha. Let's weigh that into our decision making. Let's say you're in the middle stage, right? You have money, you have health, but you might not have time. Boy, the kids are still in school, right? My daughter has ballet lessons. I'm just so busy. I'm in the height of my career. Well, that's a factor to think of. And then when you're 60 plus, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of time, but you don't have the health. So when you are looking at an experience, a one-off thing that you are interested in doing, when you're implementing this soft saving strategy, a couple of frames, tips, tricks that I can give you is a quick checklist and a quick frame to think through this to decide whether it makes sense for you. First, do you have your financial house in order? Are you financially healthy? Second, do we have some sort of emergency fund in case something does go wrong? If we don't have those two things, then let's keep putting the money in there. Let's keep saving until we can go on that cruise, or we can do that ski trip, or we can go on that Germany internship. Well, do you have, let's say, you have your financial health, you have your savings, and then you'll have what stage you're in. Are you 20 to 30? Are you 30 to 60? These are averages, all ranges, but it's a good frame for us. Are you in the time frame? Do you have a lot of time? Do you have a lot of money? Do you have a lot of health? Allow that to impact you. Then think of it like this. Okay, it feels like a lot now. Do I have the capacity to earn more in the future? Do I have income inflation where I will be the one that increases it? It's going to feel like a lot now, but I bet you when I look at it in the past or 20 years from now, it won't feel like that much. What will be my memory dividends off of that? What will be the memories I can smile at and I can look at and I can refer back to? And will this be during a season that I can physically do this? I think of this picture. There was this picture of this couple in Venice in one of those canoe boats with, please let me know. I know the word. It's the gentleman who pushes the boat behind and he does the service. And you see this beautiful couple, but they're in probably their 70s to 80s, and they have fallen asleep on each other on this, what I imagine would be a vacation they've dreamed of for years, maybe even decades. And you think about that and you say, do I really want to wait? Do I want to push off that vacation until I'm that age? Or is there a season in my life where this would be best met? Will I be backpacking? Will I be doing these young, adventurous things, using the most of my body while I can? Well, that should be accounted for. I hope that helps. I hope that helps put some satisfaction into some of the troubling questions we ask ourselves. I know for me, I like to beat myself up saying, no, I need a certain amount here and a certain amount there, and I need to have all these ducks in place. I need to have all my little puzzle pieces perfectly set, and then I can go have fun. Right? I haven't earned it yet. That's a big limiting belief that I used to have. I haven't earned it yet. Well, when you're looking at opportunities like adventures, will it be in the season of life? Are you in the right stage? Do you have the capacity for it? What will your memory dividends be like? I hope that helps. Last but not least, I do want to end on something I have been personally working on. And this is why it came up. It's you're unfortunately listening to me, so I get to give you what's hot on my mind. But I also hope this helps you. This is the how to practice the balancing of the in-between stages of life. If you know anything about my story, you'll know that last year, on my 28th year of life, I was in a rut. I was, how can I put it? I was judging myself harshly off of the metrics I told myself when I was a young man at 18 years old that would measure my success. Purely financial. I'm going to do this when I'm 30 years old. I'm going to have this net worth. I'm going to have this cash flow by the age I was 30. And when I turned 28, I had a hard time with that. I went and talked to my therapist and I said, hey, I talked to luckily a good friend of mine, a high performance coach, and I was like, hey, what do you think? And it was something called the gaps and the gains. It was acknowledging how far you've come. But also, it was also acknowledging that there are some things that you have progressed at that are not clearly measurable. And it also was this idea of embracing the in-between stages. And here's a good idea. Here's a good post. It's the Huffington Post, how to practice embracing the in-between stages. But it kind of shares this idea, and I'll summarize a little bit of it. It summarizes the idea that there are highs and there are lows. But by definition of a high and a low, there's also a medium. There's also a lukewarm bowl in the bear's house. There's also a time where things are just fine. There's also a time where things are routine. They're consistent. They're predictable. They're in between life stages. And those moments are okay. In those moments, here's a couple of things that I've used in my life, especially over the past 6 months, which have put myself in a better mental frame, has given myself perspective, but has also made me enjoy the moment where I'm in. So, let's say you're listening to my voice right now. Let's say you are in a routine. I wouldn't call it a rut, but let's just say you've been doing the same thing for a while now. And it's not bad, it's not terrible, it's not super exciting. Well, how do you feel? Do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel you're running at your highest capacity? Do you feel the excitement and stretching of doing something new? Probably not. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Not at all. That could be an absolute wonderful thing. Some things in life worth pursuing take time. Now, when you are in those moments, an in-between stage, you can try something. You can do something. And here's what I would recommend. First, being grateful. Here's a fun exercise. Here's 2 exercises I'll give you. So, you get up, you go to work, you come back, if you have a family, you hang out with your family. If you don't, you just come back home, you eat your dinner, you go to bed. You could argue to say, nah, I'm not really satisfied. That's true. However, think of this for me. Imagine you're 5 years younger. Imagine 5 years back, or maybe 6 years, wherever it was the last stage you were in. And remember, boy, just how much you would have been grateful for that job. If you met your spouse in that time, remember how exciting it was to have the opportunity to look at that person, have a fun exchange, and oh my goodness, get their number. Or nowadays, it's swiping left or right. You 5 years younger would have begged and been absolutely in joy, in ecstatic excitement to be in the same spot you are today. Remember that. This is what we call the gaps and the gains. This is what I learned recently. This is the acknowledgement of the progress you've made, and also reminding yourself that you used to be the kind of person that would have absolutely envied and wanted what you currently have today. This is almost taboo in our culture. This is the acknowledgement and appreciation that you're actually doing a great job. Now, sometimes you don't feel like it, and sometimes you can't measure it. Like for me, the biggest thing was it's easy to measure a spreadsheet. It's really hard to measure being a good dad. Like, am I really doing good in life? Well, my son loves me. I'm doing my parenting based off of values. I've learned what not to do, what to do. I'm constantly trying things like a mad scientist. I'm listening to other parents. And I look back at that and I say, I can't measure that. It's not as clear black and white as it is a spreadsheet, a bank balance. But now that I look back at it, and when he comes up and he wraps his arms around my leg and he says, I love you, Daddy. He says, I'm so lucky to have you. Maybe I'm doing something. Maybe I'm doing something right. So, first acknowledge and run the exercise of your 5-year younger self. Feel what they would feel and put the smile on your face that, yeah, I have made some progress. Also acknowledge that there's some areas in life that they cannot be measured. I want you to open those areas up, uncover those areas. What areas can you attest to that have gotten a little bit better? A little brighter, a little smoother, a little bit more perspective on. And then you can run the second example, which is I've been running often recently. It is the frame of the 85-year-old self. Imagine you're 85 years old and wake up and you wake up but you're 37 again. Oh my goodness. And you wake up and you get out of bed. Oh my gosh, my back doesn't hurt. And then you go downstairs and you see your spouse, your wife, your husband, your family, and they're so young. And you look down at your kids and you can see that there's milk all over the floor. That the toys, the Lego death traps are still waiting for you in the living room, and you're smiling because you're 85 years old and you're getting to glimpse at your 37-year-old self, and you see all these things, and you would give the world to have those again. When you're in a moment that's particularly tough, when you're in the in-between stages, it's not the rock bottoms, we don't need to do an intervention, but it's also not the highs. It's not the Instagram highlight reel. What would your 85-year-old self say? Would he or she be absolutely excited to wake up today? What goals are you working towards? Another thing is having goals. What goals excite you? Are you saving for a vacation? Are you looking for a job promotion? Are you going to get the bigger home? Are you going to get into the hobby? Are you going to do this thing that's been in your heart? Sometimes the reason why we're not happy with where we are is because we don't know that we're on a trail that goes somewhere. And sometimes, once we know where that trail goes, we're excited as all can be. We can delay gratification long enough, right? Now, if it's an excursion, who knows? Maybe you want to do the soft saving method, have an experience. But for those in-between moments, What would yourself say 5 years ago? What would your 85-year-old self say? What is the areas that you can't quite measure that you've actually made good, substantial progress in? What are the goals you're fighting for, working towards? This is 97.9 KLLG, your Willits hometown radio. I'm your humble host, Raymond Habel, and thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for watching this show. And I hope you have a wonderful day.